reassembling my wheel hubs. As you can see, I've moved my my working space from my workbench to the concrete floor, which is on the request of my my wife, who said that the hammering was making her crazy. So just by putting everything on the concrete floor, I hope to produce a little bit less noise. I have my two wheel hubs here, which have been completely powder coated. This is my front wheel hub, in which I already inserted the bearings. That's one, and that's two, and in between the two bearings is the spacer. So this one is basically finished now. What I'll have to do with this is put some loop here on the bearing and on the inside, put some loop on this bearing on the inside, and then I'll have to close the whole thing off with this washer, which hooks into the speedometer cable, and this seal here. Of course, I also have to put some lubricant on the inside of the seal, and then I'll just press this in. As you know, I'm a big fan of pressing. And on the other side, well, I'll loop this, and then I'll put some grease, of course lithium grease, on the inside of this washer, dust seal, and I'll press this dust seal in. This is also a dust seal, of course. And then I'm done with the front wheel hub. By the way, I punched these bearings in place with this socket, which is number 27, which fits exactly on the outside of the bearing, and so on the outer race, and it also fitted inside the wheel hub. Now what I'm going to do today is prepare my rear wheel hub. So I've got my rear wheel hub, which is also powder coated. I have to insert a bearing here, spacer in the middle, and then a bearing here. As you can see perhaps, I've cleaned out the inside of the housing, so the bearing will slide in smoothly. There was still some paint from the powder coating there, so just took that out with a bit of sandpaper, and this side was already clean, so it's gonna be no problem. This is my spacer. So I'll just do this from the beginning, and yeah, if you're getting a bit tired of it all, just fast forward a little bit. Yeah, let's get started. First of all, I'll just move this straight over here. I'll move it over here. Get myself a light. And I'll just refocus the camera. Okay, I think this will do. Now I put on the floor a piece of newspaper, in this case a magazine, and I've also got my welding glove out again, which I've used more as a support for hammering than I've used it for welding, because I can't weld. But never mind. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to prepare my bearings. I got my set of lubricants. As you can see, the top one is silicone grease, middle one is lithium grease, and the bottom one is molybdenum. For these bearings, the service manual recommends to use lithium grease, so that's what I'll do. So first of all, I will grease up the bearing that I'm gonna put in. Now, I'm only gonna degrease one surface here, so in this case the bearings are completely closed up, so I don't know whether it actually makes sense to grease them, but no, I'll just do so anyway. You can never use enough grease when it comes down to bearings, as far as I know. So I'll just put some lithium grease on the top, and then I'll put the grease all on the side, and this will make it a bit easier for the bearing to slide in. Okay. It's a bit of a dirty job, so keep your cloths handy. Keep your cloths at hand, I should say. Your rags. Okay. So this bearing now is nicely looped. Oh, focuses, yeah. It's nicely looped, and I'll just keep the bottom part for later. I'll put this bearing at a place where I can use it. So for instance, put it over here on the paper. Now, that'll be it for now. Secondly, I'll have to create some more space into the wheel hub. So might want to zoom in a little bit. Yeah, like this, like so. So of course, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to heat up the bearing housing with my propane torch. Now, as this wheel hub has already been powder coated, I want to do it really gently because I don't want to ruin my powder coating on the outside. I don't know exactly what temperatures or what kind of heat this powder coat can withstand, but just to be sure, it's going to be very gentle. So I'll light my torch. Right now it's just a really small flame, as you can see, hopefully. Yeah, it's just a really small flame. Oh. I'd rather use a small flame and then heat it for an extensive period of time than use a big flame and then ruin my powder coating. Now I'm not gonna touch the housing with my bare hands, so I don't have to use any welding gloves. I'm just slowly going to spin the hub around while I'm heating it up. Might want to do this on the glove. Was for me a bit of a tough decision whether to put in the bearings first and then have it powder coated, or first have it powder coated and then put in the bearings. But as these bearings contain plastic, the decision was easily made. I just had to have it powder coated first and then put in the bearing. There's no other way. Otherwise the plastic would melt during the powder coating process and I'd have to start all over again. So I'm just slowly spinning my wheel hub with a very small flame in it, and hopefully this housing will expand enough for me to punch the bearing in. Now I can already feel the wheel hub getting hot. I have no idea how long to heat this up, so I always just use my sense. Actually, I think this will be enough. So, turn off my torch. I'll just grab the bearing that I looped just now, and I'll put it in with the looped side down. Hopefully it already slide in a little bit. No, not really. So now I just grab a socket that exactly fits the outside of this bearing, the outer race, and I'll give it a few punches so to make sure the bearing is going straight. And it goes down. Seems to slide in nicely. Now the only problem I have here is that this socket fits perfectly around the outer race, but it doesn't go into the housing. So now I'll have to change sockets, and I'll go from a 30 to a 29, which is just a bit smaller, but this will fit into the housing. And it has to be seated in here. You see, the socket just slides in. Now the sound changes. That means that the bearing is seated against the rim. So that sounds good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick my finger in here from the other side and feel if the bearing is actually seated properly, if I can reach it with my finger. No, can't even reach it. My finger's too short, or the hub is too wide. But the sound was good. I actually feel the bearing touching the rim against which it's seated. So I'm happy with this bearing. So now, yeah, still turns smoothly. So I haven't damaged the bearing, I think. So now I'm going to leave this for what it is. And I'll have to start working on the other side. Let's see. Same deal, socket number 30 doesn't fit into the housing, but it fits exactly on the outer race of the bearing. Socket 29 fits inside the housing, inside the hub, but it's just a bit loose, so you have to make sure that's exactly in the middle of the bearing, because you don't want to the bearing to start twisting. Now of course we'll have to put in the spacer. This spacer doesn't touch any part of the hub on the outside. It's just to maintain the proper space between the two bearings. The inside, the axle will go through the inside, so what I'm going to do, don't know if it makes any sense, but I'm going to do it anyway. Just going to put a little bit of loop on the inside of the spacer. Just feel good about it. Also on the other side. Alright, so this spacer is ready. It's ready to space. Now I'll grab my second bearing. Gonna loop that up the same way that I looped up my first bearing, just put a little bit on the top surface, or a little bit, put a lot on the top surface. Basically, you just don't want to be stingy with your lubricant. So, and now I'm gonna loop that outside. Make it easier to slide in. Okay, this bearing is, I would say, properly looped with the lithium based grease. I'll put this aside on the paper again, clean up my hands. I'm gonna turn on my blowtorch again. Make sure that the flame is nice and small. Now I'm going to start heating the housing. Now this housing, this part here is pretty thick, so I think it needs a bit more heat than the other side. And also it's not powder coated on the outside, so I don't have to be as gentle as I had to be with the other side. So the trick is first to heat the hub. First you heat up the housing of the bearing, and then slide in your spacer, because if you slide in your spacer first and then you heat the hub, the grease on your spacer might catch on fire. Might even turn up my torch just a little bit, because this is just really thick. This end of the hub is actually the part on which the extension is slid, on which you put your sprocket. So that's why it's a bit more massive. In these holes here you'll have the balancers, the rear wheel balancers. Now the hub starts to get pretty hot now, pretty warm. Basically when it's starting to get like too hot to handle, then I stop. Now I think this will do. So I take on the torch, slide in the spacer, kind of locate it in the middle. Yeah, for now. And now we're going to make use of the hot hub as quickly as possible, because now it's still a bit expanded, so you have to be quick now. Put the bearing on, use my socket to get it going. First punches are just to straighten out the bearing. Oh, this is number 30. Yeah. Slides in. It's nice. Slides in nicely. Always make sure that the socket is exactly located on top of the outer race. Now we're going to change sockets. So we'll go from a 30 to a 29. Goes in. Now the only thing you want to make sure is that the spacer underneath is located exactly in the middle, because otherwise your axle won't fit through. Now just make sure that the spacer is okay. Oh. Sound is changing. Oh. Make sure the spacer is in the right location. Exactly underneath the hole. Now, I think this is good. So I'm going to give it its final punches. Here the sound is changing. And what I'm going to do now in the end is grab my axle and run it through. Here's my rear axle. I'm going to see if it slides in. Now, not really. Just going to give it a couple of punches. And it's in. Got it going. Yeah. Feels good. Smooth. I can really imagine me zooming down the highways with this wheel hub. So that's the art of, or the art, it's my art of inserting a bearing. It's probably everybody's art, but I thought it's just good to have it on video. There's probably a million videos like this out there, but hey, never mind. Just gonna do it as well. Now the hub is still pretty hot, so I don't want to do anything with it. I just gotta let it cool down for a bit. What I'm gonna do when it's cooled down is I'm gonna loop up this part, this side, just loop up the surface, I'm gonna put lube or grease on this dust seal, and I'm gonna, now yeah, probably, I don't think it will fit into my vise, so probably like hammer it in as well, gently. And on the other side there's no dust seal, because there will be the fitting that holds the sprocket, and it will slide on top of this. But there's an O-ring on the outside, which is this O-ring here. So I'm just gonna put the O-ring on, and I'm gonna put grease on top of the bearing. Just basically like give it a nice coating of grease, and then I'm done. So, well, that was very productive. This is my work. Up. And now, see you in the next video. Bye.